Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around, considering I haven't posted a video in about a month, so that's kind of on me for not doing that. But rest assured, I have not given up on this channel, and I'm going to continue doing everything I can to make sure I get good content out to you guys. So this week, I'm going to be going over one of my project rifles that I've actually been working on for over a year. This is the Colt Enhanced Patrol Rifle, or the Colt EPR. For those that are not really interested in watching the rest of the video, it's basically a Colt 6920 that's been upgraded a little bit more modular than the normal Colt rifle that you see at your local sporting goods store. So this thing has a 16-inch barrel. It's a button-cut rifled barrel. It also has a Centurion CMR rail on it. It comes with a B5 Systems SOPMOD buttstock, and it does come with Magpul Pro flip-up sights, which is pretty cool. Other than that, this thing is pretty standard. This thing is actually marketed towards police departments, thus the patrol rifle concept, as something a little bit more cost-effective while still having a great amount of features that they can sell directly to police departments without needing to upgrade that much. So as I mentioned, this rifle is not stock anymore. I've modified it quite a bit. This first photo is what the rifle is going to look like right out of the box. And for those that are wondering, this thing was actually marketed as the Colt Combat Unit Carbine a few years earlier. So if you see any reviews on the Combat Unit Carbine or the EPR, it's the exact same rifle. For all I know, I don't know if Colt did anything in between that time that they changed the marketing. So I'm going to go over what I've done to this rifle. So first things first, I added the Sons of Liberty Knox flash hider. As you can see, this is suppressor ready. It's ready to take a dead air type silencer. It has porting in the sides, so it acts as a brake without it being concussive, which is freaking awesome. Next, I have my favorite light, the Surefire M600 dual fuel with a pressure pad. I get 1500 lumens on the rechargeable battery. As you can see, I have a Magpul vertical foregrip attached to the MLOK rail. And the cool thing about this rifle is it has a low profile pinned gas block. So there are holes drilled into the barrel so that they can pin the gas block to the barrel so that there's no way that it can be misaligned. They've included the Centurion arms, CMR, MLOK handguard, which is very thin, very lightweight. You have the Magpul Pro flip-up sights, which are metal. They're not going to break like the MBUS sights. And I've also added the Radian Raptor charging handle. So this is the first time I put a Raptor on any of my guns. I like it a lot. I think the price it's definitely worth it. But my favorite to this day is still going to be the POF Tomahawk. This gun does come with an ambidextrous safety, which is pretty nice considering it's out of the box. It comes with a crummy MilSpec trigger, so I went ahead and changed it for a GEISSELE SDE 3.5 pound trigger. It's very smooth, easy to get follow-up shots. I put a bad lever on this gun. It just makes it easier to lock the bolt back from one side. I'm not really into, dropping the bolt and doing reloads with the bad lever. I mainly just use it to go ahead and lock bolts back for malfunction purposes. So if you watched the intro and you saw the Instagram posts, one of the most appealing parts of this rifle is going to be the optic setup. I'm using the Vortex Viper PST Gen 2 1:6 LPVO using a Reptilia AAUS mount with a Trijicon RMR on top. That is a lot to say, and it's actually a lot to work with. Having two optics is something that you really need to train with, and it's not something as simple as, oh, well, I'll use this for this distance, and I'll use this optic for this distance, for further distances. It's really not that easy. You're going to have to train a lot with it to get good at it. So the Vortex Viper is a great option for those that don't want a full, 1 to 10 LPVO. The 1 to 6 works really great. It's really easy to switch between all the settings. It's really easy to adjust the focus, and the turrets are capped, so you can beat the crap out of the scope, and it's going to hold 0. I have the Trijicon RMR on top, and I have the LED version, so I can't adjust the brightness. It does it automatically, but I've never had an issue with it being bright enough. So reiterating again, you really have to put the time in to master having an optic on top, doing the 12 o'clock position, rather than having it at the 45-degree offset. I personally was not a fan of the 45-degree offset. That's why I went with the 12 o'clock. I don't know. For me personally, I just was never a fan of it. So the 12 o'clock I felt like made more sense, but I was not anticipating the really steep learning curve. Okay, so this seems to be the part that people get really touchy on, and that's accuracy. This is by no means a scientific test. This is by no means a professional test. This is simply my accuracy test based off how accurate I am and with the ammunition that I use. Just remember, guys, don't expect perfection out of me or any other shooter, especially when you're watching YouTube videos. So I really wanted to thank you guys for giving me a lot of feedback, some good and some negative, and I appreciate both sides. Someone mentioned that I should probably get a higher powered scope, somewhere around a 12 power scope to get tighter groups, you know, aim small, miss small, and that's probably true. That'll probably help out a lot. However, the only reason that I won't be doing that is because I want to see what type of accuracy I'm going to get with this particular setup. In the future, if I get a new out-of-the-box rifle, you bet I'll throw a really high-power scope on there to see exactly what kind of accuracy you should expect out of the box. But with my own setups, with how I'm going to run them and how I know I'm going to shoot them, I'm going to use the type of ammo that I'm probably going to use and the scope and optic setup that I'm going to use. So take it with a grain of salt. You might get better or worse accuracy than I do, but I'm making this review simply as a baseline, just for you to see what kind of accuracy you should expect. And you should find that the results might be somewhere in the middle. So I started with Winchester Freedom 55 grain 223 and started with a 2.8 MOA group. This is pretty standard stuff off the shelf from your local sporting goods store. Then on to Freedom Munitions 223 55 grain, and I got about a 2.2 MOA group with that. Also pretty standard for Freedom Munitions. Tula 223 steel case, also got 3.2 MOA. That stuff's not very consistent. I went on to Federal 64 grain soft point. It's actually deer hunting ammunition, and that was a 2.6 MOA group. However, my windage was dead on. I didn't really have to adjust anything. Hornady match 75 grain 223 got a 3.5 MOA group. I really don't know what was happening there. I'm actually probably not going to count this as this is most likely shooter error because that stuff's supposed to shoot really well. Then on to Federal 40 grain varmint ammunition. As 1.5 MOA. That stuff shot pretty good. I was pretty impressed. And then after that, I went to Federal Gold Medal Match, 77 grain 223, and got about a 1.5 inch group as well. And then Freedom Munitions, 62 grain 5.56, which ended up at 2 MOA. And this stuff is going to perform almost exactly the same as Lake City 62 grain green tip ammunition. So like I said, your results will vary, but from my own shooting, I averaged around 2.4 MOA. If you take out the Hornady match ammunition results, the average actually ends up being about 2 MOA. MilSpec is anywhere from 2 to 4.5 MOA, so I'm well within MilSpec, and this is pretty standard for a Colt barrel, being a button cut and chrome lined barrel. That's accurate enough. You have to remember a 2-inch group at 100 yards is about the size of an average man's palm. Right, so that's still a pretty tight group. So remember, there's nothing wrong with having a really accurate gun, but there's also nothing wrong with having a gun that's going to shoot around 2 MOA. Remember that most guns are more accurate than you are, and accuracy tests vary from shooter to shooter. Some of those factors are going to be what type of optic you're using. You know, obviously I'm using a 1 to 6 LPVO, so if I had like an 8 or a 10 power optic, I'd probably tighten those groups up to about, 1.5 MOA. On top of that, even though you might be shooting the same grain ammunition as another YouTuber or another shooter, all ammunition is made differently depending on the manufacturer, and some guns like certain ammo more than others, so that definitely plays a factor. Your environment also plays a factor. How hot is it? How humid is it? Is it freezing cold? And then on top of that, experience truly matters. A match grade shooter is going to shoot way better than I am. Point being, this gun is accurate enough for me and is accurate enough for what I'm going to be using it for. So for multi-purpose, multi-distance engagements. So now that we've talked about accuracy, let me go ahead and talk about reliability. I've had 100% reliability in this gun, with the exception of a malfunction that was caused by a 20-round Colt mag that you can actually see earlier in this video, just in some of the B-roll footage. That thing is so old, it actually just it failed to lock back on the last round. And then on top of that, it ended up shooting a bullet straight up into the receiver just because those feed lips are so worn out. So yeah, otherwise with the gun, no malfunctions, no stovepipes, no failure to eject or extract, nothing like that. As you can see in the footage, I'm getting really consistent 3 to 4 o'clock ejection, which means this thing is perfectly gassed right out of the factory. And then using the Sons of Liberty Nox helps to keep this gun completely in line rather than having a lot of muzzle rise or dip and without being concussive. This thing is a very soft and smooth shooter. So I performed various drills at my police range, a lot of reloads, a lot of transitioning, and try to do as many multi-round dumps as I could into the targets without wasting a ton of ammo to really get the feel for the trigger as well as how well tuned this gun is. Now, I also spent a considerable amount of time learning how to transition between my LPVO and the red dot at the 12 o'clock, and it is not an easy thing to get. When you have an optic that high up, you basically don't have a cheek weld and you're kind of going with a chin weld. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be a little hard at first. And I just wanted to mention that even while training, I make mistakes sometimes. And it's really easy to think that everybody else is a grandmaster tactical wizard and that they never make mistakes and that they always look cool while they're practicing. But, you know, I'm putting in a whole bunch of footage of me fumbling with mags, messing up drills, shrugging my shoulders, and that's just how it goes. That's part of training. If you can't get it right the first time, try it again. That's the whole point in training, is so that you can get it right eventually after doing it a billion times. So when it comes to the optic mount, the Reptilia AUS, this is the first time I've ever used a Reptilia product, but it's pretty solid. This thing never came loose. It had the torque specs right out of the box, and it was pretty easy to set up. Also being able to attach the RMR on top is a huge help. So the Vortex Viper is a great optic. It's very, very clear glass, and you do have the ability to turn on a red dot. So if you want to use that as your primary optic and just solely rely on the LPVO as if it were a red dot, you can do that. I did that for the majority of the shooting that I was doing, just to be able to get used to the scope itself, but also learning to use the LPVO as a red dot in the case that my red dot itself failed to function correctly. So my thoughts so far: if you're trying to set up a recce rifle, I think this is a really good combination. Having a LPVO of some sort and then a red dot on top or at the 45 is a really, really good setup to have. You know, considering that you could run an LPVO without the battery at all, so you don't need to change batteries in that thing ever if you don't plan on ever turning on the reticle. And then usually these micro dots have like years of battery life in them. Now, as there's all these pros, there are plenty of cons in every review that you could do. And my main con for this rifle is, since you're using such a lightweight and thin handguard, this thing heats up quick. It does get very hot. So if you're gonna shoot long volleys of fire and you're gonna just dump rounds, wear gloves, because I was burning my hand by the end of this. But the show must go on and I must get good footage for you guys. But just keep that in mind. With something like this, with lighter weight and thinner, you're gonna have, you're not gonna have as much heat dissipation. The other thing that I'll say is, when you buy a rifle from Colt, I don't know if this is just my luck or if somebody else has explained it, but cosmetically, they're actually not very pretty. If you get a Colt straight from the factory, you might actually find nicks and dings, and some of their machine work, even though it's anodized over, you'll see burrs on the receivers that are actually anodized over, and that drives me bonkers. I mean, sure, it's purely cosmetic and the rifle functions really well, but come on, Colt, like, take some pride in your product, make this thing look really good, give it some good finish, don't be afraid to lube it up before you ship it out, and make sure the thing is clean. Actually, when I got mine was dirty. The bolt was filthy. And that might be a good sign, showing that they test fired it really well, but also, like, would it kill you to just have somebody wipe it down? And on that same note, the safety on my gun is actually kind of gritty. It's worn in over time, but come on, guys, that's most likely a fit and finish thing. They could have sanded down the inside of the receiver where the safety goes into, and I'm pretty sure that's it. I could do that myself, but I don't want to have to sand down, a part because it feels like it's super gritty. So, fit and finish seems to be my only complaint so far. Otherwise, this thing functions very, very well. The reason that I got this gun is because I was actually going to use it as a patrol rifle on the street. It used to be that a department allowed you to use a personal rifle for rifle qualification, and then they changed the policy after I bought this thing, and now we can only be using issued rifles. So yay for me. I was left with this rifle that I can't use on the street. So I painted it up and made it look all cool and deserty and operator and all that good tactical jazz that everybody seems to be into today. Funny enough, however, the rifle that is now being issued is the exact same rifle, but the SBR'd version, so an 11.5-inch barrel versus a 16-inch barrel. So I can vouch for the effectiveness and the reliability of these rifles. Everybody that's being issued them is loving them so far. They all shoot very smooth, even as 11.5-inch versions of the gun. So would I buy this gun if I were you? Well, yeah, actually I would. Colt has been around for a long time. Granted, it's definitely under new management. I'm pretty sure it's CZ that now owns it, but if anything, that should be a better sign because they are very successful. They know what they're doing. These rifles have been working for a long time for military and police, so if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for you. You can pick these rifles up for anywhere around $1,200 to $1,500, but it's more common to find them anywhere from $1,200 to $1,300. And some people are going to complain about that price and say, well, I could buy a Palmetto complete rifle with an optic for less than $700. And my rebuttal to that is going to be, okay, sure, yeah, you can, and maybe that's going to be just fine for you because you might just shoot once or twice a year. But in the long run, this gun is going to hold up longer than that rifle ever will. And that's going to hurt some feelings and make some people upset and definitely throw some rage in my comment section, but that's the reality. When you pay more for a product, it's not because they're throwing a name brand at it. It's because they usually have more R&D behind it, more testing, more, or better manufacturing techniques. And I'm not at all saying that Palmetto or other cheap guns are bad guns, but they're not riddled, they're not without their own problems. My AR-10 that I recently reviewed has been having some serious issues recently. And don't worry, I'll be making a video on that. I want you guys to know I am not brand loyal and I will not defend anything that is crap, whether it's expensive crap or cheap crap. If it's crap, it's crap. For a cop's perspective, if there's a cop out there looking for a good patrol rifle that they don't really have to do anything to, and can just go ahead and buy a good optic like an Aimpoint Pro and slap that thing on there and throw it in their patrol car, I think this is the perfect option. You've got your backup iron sights, you've got a great reliable bolt carrier, you have a nice furniture set, and a very well gassed rifle. It's going to do the job. But as always, to all my viewers, this is America. You can get and use whatever you want and whatever suits your budget and whatever suits your desires. Get what you want. Don't let me change your mind. So that's going to be the end of the review. Thanks so much for sticking around and for your continued support of the channel. I've got great content coming out for you guys. I'm going to be fixing my mounts, my GoPro mount, so that my GoPro is not going to be shaking around when I shoot so much. And then on top of that, I've got some cool ideas. I've been thinking about possibly releasing a patch or possibly a t-shirt or some other kind of merch. So throw in the comments what you'd like to see, any other video ideas, any suggestions, things that you feel like would be better in these videos. And then on top of that, let me know any kind of cool merch, any kind of patches, whatever you want to see, any kind of giveaways. I mean, we are approaching 600 subscribers, and by the end of the year, if we hit 1,000 subscribers, I will have a giveaway. I got to figure out what I'm going to do for that first, but even if it comes out of my own pocket, you guys deserve it. You guys have helped make this channel for what it is today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe.